So this week in the Rangeland Vegetation Inventory and Monitoring class, we're going to go to New Mexico. And we're going to study a project that is called Restore New Mexico. It was led by the Bureau of Land Management, but has a lot of collaborators with the project. It started about a decade ago in 2005, and their goal was really to restore the state's grasslands, woodlands, and riparian areas to a very healthy and productive state. Initially, their goal was to treat 1 million acres, and they were so successful that now, to date, they've treated over 3 million acres. If you want to know more about this project, take a look at this web page link, or just Google Restore New Mexico. I will also have this link in the case study project, the class assignment, so you can learn more about this project. So let me tell you more. So the challenge to New Mexico land managers was that historically most of New Mexico is a grassland, especially the southeastern part, which on the map on the left, which looks at the historic dominant vegetation community, you'll see a lot of yellow in the southeast. That was mostly grasslands. Over time, there was a lot of conversion of that to desert shrublands. The shrublands were made of mostly creosote, mesquite, tarbush, and a few others. But that invasion of shrubs really created a lot of problems because it enhanced erosion and decreased the forage quality for wildlife and livestock. So the challenge was a conversion over time to a woody plant community away from grasslands. The land managers then in New Mexico, led by the Bureau of Land Management, decided to try to do something about it. They wanted to return those plant communities to a more natural or historic successional state. They were especially worried about invasive plants and non-native species, and they wanted to allow the native plants to flourish. One of their overall goals was to benefit watersheds and stabilize soil conditions, because without grasses in those desert communities, often there's a lot of soil loss. And the bottom line is they really wanted to increase the forbs and grasses, the herbaceous vegetation, and the favorable shrubs to improve wildlife habitat. So a lot of really good goals, but a really large area that had to be managed and restored, and they did it several different ways. They were looking at trying to remove salt cedar in many places. Herbicide treatments of annual grasses. There are some annual grasses in this ecosystem, so they used some pre-emergent herbicides to try to control that. They did treat a lot of shrubs with herbicides on rangeland. That's what the sources of this case study data were some data that were taken before and after herbicide treatments. And in some areas in the higher elevation, they also used prescribed fire to restore some of the forests and woodlands. So it was really broad scale, a lot of different ecosystems, and some really aggressive kinds of vegetation management programs. The focus of this particular assignment that we have this week is in the Carlsbad, New Mexico BLM field office. I had a chance to meet with some folks there when I was working down in New Mexico. They showed me around, and they gave me the chance to look into some of the pre-treatment and post-treatment data that they were doing in that area. So the goal was to apply herbicides and reduce shrub cover and increase the native forbs and grasses. And with these data, we'll see if they accomplish their goal. I'll tell you a little bit more about the sampling project that we did. We had one 100-foot transect on each site. The sites were established before herbicides were applied, and that was in 2006. They established the plots, and then herbicides were applied, and a couple of years later, either in 2008 or 2009, so 2 to 3 years post-treatment, the plots were examined again with the exact same treatments, and they estimated the cover by line intercept of species, including the major grasses and shrubs, and this was all done by species. We're going to combine a lot of the individual species into categories of grasses, forbs, and shrubs. Also, the method that was used here was line intercept, Don't confuse that with line point intercept. Line is where you actually look for canopy cover all the way along the line, not at points along the line, but just the cover across the line. So I'll explain that more. The treatments. So we'll get a chance to look at some of those photos. Again, the plots were examined by species. The folks that I worked with were great botanists, so they did identify everything by species. For this project, we're going to just focus on 4 species. There were 2 major grasses that were on most of the sites. One was burrow grass, which is Scleropogon brevifolius. Another was therion, purple therion, Aristida purpurea. There were many forbs. We won't look extensively at the forbs, but you'll see in the data the list of forbs in case you're interested. The shrubs that we're going to examine are mesquite, which is Prosopis glandulosa, and creosote bush, which is Laria tridentata. And we'll see if the BLM managers there were able to reduce those shrubs and increase the grasses. We measured cover by land intercept, as I mentioned, so that is walking across along a line and looking for the canopy cover that is directly below the tape. So you're looking for all the area that is covered by any species along that transect. This is kind of confusing when you look at these data. It was a 100-foot transect, but they have these specialized transect tapes that they use for cover where they divide a foot into 10 segments. So the data are taken in tenths of feet, not inches. That's a little bit weird. So it's like taking the metric system and applying it to feet. So the transects are tenths of feet, and that's what you'll see with the data that you're calculating in this assignment. It's great, though, because it's really easy to calculate cover then. So, for example, if you have a plant that covers 10 units along the tape, or it covers 1 foot, so it covered 10 tenths of a foot, so it covers 1 foot. For example, it might go from 0.5.2 to 0.6.2. It would cover 1% of the tape because it covers 1 foot out of 100, and that's how you calculate cover. You take the area that a plant covered and divide it by the total area of the transect. So it makes it easy. The numbers that you estimate along the tape, when you tally them all up, that gives you the percentage of cover, which is www.plants.usda.gov. And to get the 4-letter code, just go to the drop-down menu on the left-hand side and look up symbol. So, for example, when you look at the data, you'll see at the top of each column is a 4-letter code. And, for example, one of the species we're going to look at is Laria tridentata, or creosote bush. And so that's LATR. Okay, again, I'm going to go back over the plants that we are studying today in this project. We're going to look at burrow grass, which is Scleropogon brevifolius, so its code is SCBR. Purple therion, it's Aristida purpurea, its 4-letter code is ARPU. Mesquite is Prosopis glandulosa, so PRGL. And creosote bush is Laria tridentata, LATR. So those are the 4 plants we're going to examine. We will look at the before and after data and photos, and I've just taken a subset of 10 plots. They had, I don't know, dozens of plots in the BLM field office in Carlsbad, but we're just going to look at 10, so just a subset. And this is the crew that I had the chance to work with, so this is a dedicated crew that's done a lot of field work and certainly know their plants and taught me most of these plants too. So let me give you a chance to just look at some of the photos. I'll also post these with the assignment so that you can take a look at these photos of plots as you interpret your data. But here's just a quick run over of the 10 plots that were examined. And then for this particular plot or transect, just 3 years later. The initial study was done in 2006, and then they sprayed the shrubs, and in 2009 they measured again, so just 3 years later. Quite a remarkable difference. Same story. This looks like this is tar bush, but a real conversion. Top dominated by creosote bush, bottom quite a few grasses coming in. Creosote bush, and then a conversion to grasses. It's the same on all of these photos because that's actually what they were trying to do, is to spray the shrubs. I think what's remarkable is how many grasses came back on the photo. So as you start thinking about how you would measure a change in vegetation by looking at line intercept data, you're going to want to see if you can actually measure the difference between the before and after in shrub cover. And it looks pretty obvious here. We'll see how obvious it is in the data. Again, we're looking at just four plants, but we will also look at overall shrub, grass, and forb cover. And yet, here's a couple of more slides. Okay, so I guess that was the end. I hope you enjoyed this tour of Restore New Mexico. Again, check out that website, and I'll give you the data in the assignment.